Hello and welcome to this Bobby Fischer video where 16-year-old Bobby Fischer wins. But how does he win? Let's find out. At 1959, when this was played, Bobby Fischer was only about 16 years old. So he's playing one of the top players in the world, Paul Keres, who was a great player. And Paul Keres begins with d4 here. And let's see how Fischer responds. Well, Fischer begins with knight to f6. And Fischer was known to play the king's Indian defense against d4 openings. So Paul Keres continues with knight to f3, a more flexible move, bringing his knight out, kind of waiting to see what Fischer does. And it looks like Fischer is going for a king's Indian defense. So here we have the London system. Now this game was played in 1959. So, the London system is pretty popular today, but it wasn't always so popular. And it, I imagine, wasn't played too often back in the 50s. So let's see how things continue here. We have Fischer fianchettoing the bishop. He's ready to castle. And now a knight jumps into the center, common move in the London system where this knight just backs up the other knight. It also covers this central square. And Fischer attacks here. Immediately attacks the pawn in the center. So how will his opponent respond? He decides to push the c pawn. That way, if a flank pawn captures the central pawn, the other flank pawn can recapture and keep the balance of 2 versus 2 central pawns in the middle. All right, capture, recapture. The pawn presses forward and keeps space equal in the middle, but this is an inaccuracy. Apparently, the computer liked knight to c6 better, but maybe Fischer didn't want the possibility of this pawn pressing up and attacking the knight. But anyway, computer likes knight to c6 better. In the game, we have an interesting move by Keres here, and this is a mistake. He gives up his bishop pair, knocks out this knight on b8. So after recapture, the queen develops with check and is able to pick up a pawn here, it looks like. So bishop blocks the check, queen captures a pawn, and Fischer's opponent has gone ahead here up by a pawn. But will he be able to use that advantage of a pawn to win the game? Let's find out. Well, we already know that Fischer wins here, but let's see how he goes about doing it. All right. Knight has landed on an outpost. Fischer's opponent decides to fortify this pawn in the center. And now the game continues with an exchange by Fischer. Apparently this is a mistake, and that it would have been better to capture with the king. And as far as that move goes, I can see why the opponent didn't do that. He wants to keep his right to castle. Also, if the king landed here on d2, queens are still on the board, so that could cause an issue. You want to be careful about bringing your kings out into the center of the board when there are still queens roaming around. All right, we have e5, a attack in the center by Fischer. So now we have bishop and pawn piling up here, although the queen is guarding for the moment. So knight jumps forward. This is a mistake according to the computer, but the knight is trying to fortify here. Why is this a mistake? Well, let's see. It looks like knight to f3 would have been better. Let's see if Fischer can take advantage of this mistake. First, he castles. Apparently, it would have been better to just go ahead and trade in the center here. So now the game continues with queen dropping back here, attacking this pawn in the middle, which is unprotected, helping guard and just centralize the queen a little bit more. This is a mistake. Apparently, bishop to e2 would have been better, and then white would be ready to castle kingside. So we have an attack on the queen. Instead of capturing this pawn, the best move is to drop over here to b4. Because if this pawn is captured, it kind of opens the center up a little bit more, and you might not want to do that when your king is still in the center here. So the game continues with rook lining up on the king. So Fischer is starting to build up some type of attack here. And the threat was, you could capture, and the pawn would not be able to capture because of the rook lined up on the king. And if the knight would capture, maybe bishop could capture and queen would capture. So anyway, a lot going on here in the middle. Bishop to e2 is played, and now white is ready to castle kingside. Fischer makes his move, targeting the pawn, capturing here on d4. A mistake, according to the computer, that it would have been better to play queen to g5, lining up on this pawn and the king if the king castles to the king side here. And also, the queen would be, eyeing this pawn possibly. If there are exchanges in the middle. Well, let's see what happens next. Knight recaptures. The queen lines up on the king. And now we have this being ignored in favor of a pawn capture here. So let's take a look at this. Fischer's opponent is ahead by 2 pawns, and they're on the queen side. He also has 2 passed pawns on the queen side. So you would think that white would be pretty much winning here maybe, but that's not true. Because now there is one move that gives the advantage to black. Let's see if Fischer finds it. Yes, he does. He plays the best move in the position, opening things up in the center when the king is still in the center. And after, so here, this is an interesting option. Do you go after the bishop like this, or do you play what Fischer's opponent did here? Well, he finds the best move. He captures that bishop because, if you capture here, not good at all, leading to a mate in 11. So, at this level, Fischer could probably tell that it would not be good for his opponent to capture here. The idea would be rook capturing bishop with check, king captures, and then rook to c2, king to d1, and then it's not looking good. The queen could capture here and protect. Best move apparently is that, and then your threat, or excuse me, maybe that wasn't the best move. Let me go back here. Yeah, it says queen to e4. That's funny. Once I make that move, it doesn't like it. So queen to e4, and that leads to, they're saying a mate in 6. The computer is getting a little confused here, I think. So queen to b8, attacking. King would have to either move or the bishop could block. That's a missed opportunity. Apparently, bishop to c8. Yeah, that would be the better move there. All right, so Then you have what? Queen to b5, preventing this mate move here. What then? Rook captures on f2, and then you're threatening this way. So yeah, Fischer would have a lot of options here. So if we get back to the game, let me go back a little bit. So Fischer starts his attack by capturing the knight because his opponent's king is still in the middle here. The opponent captures the bishop, keeping material piece-wise even though Keres is ahead by 2 pawns. So what does Fischer do next? He captures one of those pawns, so now he's only behind by a single pawn, and the rook is under attack. So rook centralizes, targets this pawn in the middle, and the game continues with Fischer checking his opponent's king with the bishop. King runs, and now the pawn presses forward, trying to open things up even more on this king. And look at Fischer's pieces. He has a bishop helping with the attack, a queen lined up here, rook, and his opponent has this rook doing nothing in the corner. So it's almost like Fischer is ahead by a whole rook here. So after capture, which is an inaccuracy, apparently queen to g4 would have been better, trying to trade off queens. So Fischer does not, he doesn't find the best move according to the computer. This would be best. But what is he doing here? He's creating a battery, threatening to capture this bishop. So the game continues with queen developing and protecting. This is an inaccuracy. Apparently, queen over here to b5 would have been better to protect that bishop. So the game continues with the best move being found by Fischer. A great move. He is still targeting the bishop, but he's eyeing this pawn as well. If this bishop were to be captured, I guess it can't be captured by the rook, as king and queen are still covering. So let's see what Fischer does here. After his opponent presses forward, the best move here, the game continues with queen capturing pawn, and now Fischer is only behind by 1 pawn, but this was a mistake and the game is dead even at this point. Apparently bishop to d2 would have been better. So bishop to d2, and then what? Bishop to d2, the computer likes rook to g1, and then rook to c3. Bishop to b5, getting ready to try and push this pawn up where it will be protected by the bishop. And it looks like f5, rook takes d2 is what the computer recommends. Okay, let's get back to the finale of the game and let's see how this ends. So queen captures. That's what Fischer did in his last move. Now he's only behind by 1 pawn, this past central pawn. And the opponent makes a blunder here. So we have a blunder. Bishop to b5. Anytime there is an unprotected piece, that can lead to some type of tactic. So, yeah, it's not looking too good here. Bishop to f3 would have been a better move. Apparently that's the best move and the game would be even here. And after this, they recommend Fischer just push his pawn, gaining space, attacking the queen. But after the blunder, let's see if Fischer takes advantage of it. Yes, he centralizes the queen, targets the bishop, and we have a fork of rook and bishop here. So, this is pretty much a game-losing move when that bishop came out. So, capture of the rook. Queen captures with check. King goes running. And now we have recapture with a check. So the game continues with the king running for its life. And now this move, because we have the king getting out of check, but the queen is under attack here. So let me go back and see how all that happened. After the queen captured the rook with check, king runs, but it allows the capture with check. King runs again, and now this threat is renewed on the queen. So a block. And this is where the game ended. Keres resigned here, and let's see why. It looks like the best option for white is to go ahead, capture the bishop, and give up more material here. Rook for bishop. So, I don't know. We could take a quick look at that. After that, you would have capture, rook captures, and then queen. Let's see. Queen to f4. Protecting this pawn, I guess. Now, queen to f1 check. King to c3. Rook to c1. And the opponent would be ahead here by a whole rook versus a pawn. So here the recommendation is to give up the queen. Then you'd really be losing if that happens. So if we go back to what happened in the game, we have an attack here. So the game ended here. The other option, instead of giving up more material, would be what? Queen to e2. That gives up material here. King to d2. Okay. What if you had that? Well, that leads to a mate in 3 with... okay, so you wouldn't want to do that. King to what? Rook to d2. All right, what if you just played something like... Well, the problem is that move if this queen moves out of guard position. So, what if you go here? Well, now that leads to a mate in 4. So, what is the mate in 4? Queen to f1 check. King to c2. Queen to c4 check. King to b1. Yeah, and it's just a disaster. Rook gets in on the action. And then... yeah, you're mated on the A file once the king moves over. All right, well, I hope I hope this game was kind of enjoyable for you. It's Fischer when he was young, only 16 here, and already playing the best players in the world. So Fischer, an amazing player. Stay tuned in this series. I'll do more Bobby Fischer games, and we'll kind of progress through his later games, later in his career as he gets older. And, there'll be a lot more to look forward to. Some crazy Fischer games. Fischer was just an outstanding player. All right, well, feel free to leave any comments, like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.